A big thanks to Brabura by Hearthstone Outdoor for sponsoring this episode.
Playing around with my steak is one of my favorite things to do. Some guys have train stations and train tracks up their attic, in their attic. Mom's basement, no. What I'm saying is every man has his own hobby, and processing meat from something like a raw steak into something freaking delicious is one of my hobbies. And I love to take this beautiful steak and turn it into something freaking amazing. In itself, this is already good steak. It has a beautiful dark red color, which means this has been working. It's been building up flavor inside the meat, and it also has a lot of fat, and that intermuscular fat is going to give this steak flavor. Now if I would just grill it, put a little bit of salt on it, let it rest and slice into it, I'm going to have an amazing steak. But what if there is a way to make this steak even more flavorful? Let's find out. I'll be cooking my steak on the Brabura by Hearthstone Flat Top Griddle. And that is going to give this steak a beautiful crust. So flavorful, such a great maillard effect on the outside. It's going to be freaking insane. But I want to add something more to it. I want to add coffee beans. This is dark roasted coffee. Beautiful dark roast. Whoa, and that dark roast, that is something that I want to put into that steak. It's going to give you that typical barbecue flavor. Well, at least that's the plan. So I'm going to take this coffee, put it in this bowl, put the steak on top, put even more coffee on top of that steak, and then I'm going to take this and set this in the fridge and let it sit there for 24 hours. And that's what it looks like 24 hours later. At first glance, you don't see a difference. This is almost exactly the same way that it looked before. But this is not some trick or a hoax. There's actually science behind this. Moisture from the steak gets absorbed by the coffee beans, and in return it delivers flavor to the steak. So there's basically a trade-off: moisture and flavor. Let's take a closer look. The color of the steak intensified. It became more and more dark red, and the steak is now much firmer than it was before. Definitely smells like coffee. And the smell is the first indication that you also have coffee flavor, because the particles that you smell are the same as the particles that are on here. This is now a better steak. A dry, crusty exterior with roasted flavors from the coffee beans and a more intensified beef flavor because of the moisture loss. But what is going to make this steak even better than it already is? That is a good crust. I'm going to fire up the two left burners and set them up to the highest position. My Scotsburg pan goes on. I'm going to drizzle in a little bit of oil, chop fine a garlic clove, dice up an onion, add the onions, add the garlic. Once the onion and garlic turn soft, it's time to add 50 grams of tomato paste. This is condensed tomato paste. I'm going to mix that in and make sure that it gets fried so it sweetens up. Then a can of tomato pulp. Let the tomatoes cook until they become sweet, just as the tomato puree. First, the onions have to become soft, then the garlic have to become soft. If you do this the other way around, you start with the garlic, it's going to burn and become bitter. You gotta make sure that the individual ingredients get the time to be cooked, to sweeten up, to build up their flavor, and that way you're gonna have something amazing in the end. Once the tomatoes have simmered for around 5 minutes, it's time to add some espresso. 2 shots of espresso will do the job. I'm going to follow that up with a tablespoon of Worcester sauce, 4 tablespoons of sugar, a tablespoon of salt, and a teaspoon of fresh ground pepper. And look at how that sauce transforms from a dark red tomato color into a brown barbecue sauce. This sauce has loads and loads of flavor. Try it. Oh. Time for the happy moment. A little bit of oil on the plancha, or a little bit, plenty of oil. Then, when the oil's hot, put the steak on. I'm a firm believer of moving your steak around when you're cooking on grill grates, especially with cast iron. It will help you build up a beautiful crust and more flavor. But with a plancha and a flat top griddle, it's a completely different story. We're building up a crust as we speak, and the only thing I want to do is press down the steak and make sure we maximize the amount of contact that the steak has with the cooking surface. You can use a burger press or a pan like this. After about 2 minutes, it's time to check. Look at that beautiful crust. Freaking amazing. Time to cook the other side. Time to check. See where we stand. Look at that. Maximum contact, beautiful crust. This steak is done and it needs some time to rest. So let's take it off. While resting, I'm going to season the steak with a little bit of finishing salt, and that is a light salt that's going to dissolve very easily. I'm going to use my carving knife to slice up my steak, and I'm going to top it off with my steak sauce. And of course, you can find the full recipe on PitmasterX.com and make this at home. That is seriously good. That sauce is freaking amazing, and it has that real nice coffee flavor. It is really, literally out of this world. A coffee steak is something you need to try.